Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Tuesday, September 5th, 2017, and you know what that means. It's time to get nerdy, y'all. It's episode number 42 of Two Nerds in a Pod, the nerdiest gaming podcast in the galaxy. I'm Lam, also known as Mr. Nice Guy, and I got my comrade in gaming commentary with me, the Miggity Mac, also known as Maction. Mac, we were chatting before, and it sounds like you have some stuff you want to talk about.
I do, and first I have to say that I love my nickname of Miggity Mac. Love it.
Good.
It's just the right amount of corniness.
I agree, dude. I think it's perfect.
It's practically a dad joke.
It fits the level of corniness that we bring to the table every week, so I think it's perfect.
It does. And I mean, as you guys know, Mr. Nice Guy, he has children. So when he makes a dad joke, it's fine. But me, I don't. So that makes me a faux pas.
But, and I hate to overemphasize this, I'm actually I do stand-up, so I don't think my jokes are really corny. Like, I don't want to brand myself as someone who does dad jokes all the time.
Well, maybe you should cut back on the dad jokes then.
I only do dad jokes when I'm like purposely being ironically corny. But anyway, Mac, you said you had some stuff you wanted to chat about. How's the week been? How's your week been?
You know, it's been a fine week. Lots of craziness going on. There's an astronomy festival that's being put on. And as you know, Mrs. the Mac is a huge astronomer. She's paid by several different organizations to astronomize. There is one place out of Nevada that employs her. There's the national parks employ her, and then there's a nonprofit that she's the president of, and not like in that way that she like made the nonprofit so she could be president, but like other people made the nonprofit and then made her president, which is even more awesome. But so there's this astronomy festival, and among other things, a lot of moving parts are going on. And so I'm, as husband, and for those of you who haven't been married, when you unlock co-op mode, that does mean that that you've always got a partner for any challenge, but that also means that occasionally the escort missions of life come around, and you need to make sure the switches are thrown right.
Brilliant analogy, my friend. I like that.
Thank you, Mr. Nice Guy. I've been working on it, and so you got to make sure that the things are being done. So there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of stuff that I'm doing on the side. That is just kind of how my week in general has been going. However, I do have a little something I want to rant. Just a touch about, and that happens to be homework. So, at some point in time, you'll have to do homework, and there are some ways of doing homework that are like easier than others, right? Depending upon who you're talking to. Like, so you could do homework, write it down on paper, turn it in. That's easier for you as a student, harder for the teacher, right? Because now the teacher has to grade it, or what really happens is they get a TA to do all the grading. But still, that's a little bit harder in there. Or you could do something that's ridiculously easy for the teacher, but crazy stupid hard for the student, which is all the online homework things. Mr. Nice Guy, have you ever had to do any online homework stuff?
Yeah, man, when I started my master's degree and just in regular college, undergrad, I did some online homework, man. It's easier, I think, for me as a student.
Wasn't it like it's easier for you as a student?
I thought so, but I could be wrong. No, I'm kidding. It really was.
Okay, well, I have never had, and maybe, I don't want to downplay your degree, but maybe there were different kinds of questions and things that were going on since mine's, chemistry.
Well,
maybe...
let me clarify because I get where you're coming from.
Okay.
So like writing an essay, poli-sci was my major, and this is where the difference comes in because you're chemistry. Writing an essay, hitting submit, a lot easier than writing an essay, printing it up, and then making sure that I'm actually there on the day that it needs to be turned in. In that regard, it's easier.
I think I'm with you. Everybody's experience is not necessarily mine, but it's been my experience that every class in my field that's ever had that sort of thing where it was online homework was great for the teacher, but it was horrible for the students. And just a great example. There was recently some homework had to be submitted, right? There were 20 questions, and it was worth 20 points. Okay, seems pretty simple.
Yeah.
However, every question had multiple parts within it. So it wasn't really 20 questions. It was about 60 questions because most of them had 3 different parts. But here's the kicker. When you start dealing with like for example, you do a workout problem on paper, right? And you submit it. Maybe you get it wrong, but you get like partial credit for doing whatever. But on computer stuff, it's like all or nothing. So you wind up like, oh, I forgot to carry a 2. And yes, that's unfortunate. But at the same time, when you've got something that's like 3 questions long, you hit submit, you find out you missed something very small, something that would have given you like partial credit if you had turned it in, and it's like everything gone, all points gone.
Yeah.
I've never had good experiences with computer, with turning in homework online. So anyway, I just wanted to rant about that because my weekend involved a lot of that stuff.
Dude, I get it. It's a totally different beast based on your major, so I totally get what you're saying. Well, man, I only got positive stuff to say about my week. I got booked for some last-minute shows last weekend, telling jokes to the masses, and wow, and I got a cough apparently. And so that was really good, man. I had a buddy come to one of the shows, and I'm always like, I want my game to be on point. I want there to be a good audience when there's friends in the crowd. And it went really, really well. There was like an old guy, speaking of dad jokes, there was like an old guy in the front row who kept like interviewing me the whole show. Like everything I said, he had a question about it. You know what I mean? Like I'd be like, I studied poli-sci in college is the setup for one of my jokes. He'd be like, what university did you attend? And I was like, well, that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about and kind of derails the joke. But I'm happy to oblige, old man, since you think this is a Q&A. Since you think this is a speed date, when really it's a stand-up show, and this is more of a monologue than it is a conversation. So other than that, the show was really, really good. And the weekend was solid, man. 3-day Labor Day weekend. I have no complaints. It was fantastic. And tonight was curriculum night at my kid's school, Max. So that was like an extended weekend. It was very leisurely. One thing I thought was hilarious that the teacher said at the curriculum night, she said, we'll be sending homework home with your kids, and you can help them with it, but if it's too hard, don't spend too much time on it. My son is in kindergarten. Like, how hard could the homework be that not only can the kid not do it, but the parents can't do it too? Really?
Hey, they're bringing new math back, Mr. Nice Guy. For those of you who don't know, new math was a thing in like the 60s. So yeah. So most of us were not alive then, but trust me, it's like what people say about Common Core. It's one of those things. It was a big deal back in the day. Anyway, carry on, Mr.
No, that was all I had to say about that. I just thought that was hilarious. Like, I know how to color in the lines. I know how to add single-digit numbers. I don't think that this homework is really going to be so hard that my brain's going to explode. But other than that, curriculum night was pretty solid. And Mac, on that note, I say we do what we do best, and we hop right into the gaming news, my friend.
Yes, let's do it. And it's been a busy week.
It has been a busy week. So for those of you who are joining us here live on twitch.tv/2nerdsinapod, this is Two Nerds in a Pod, the nerdiest gaming podcast in the galaxy, and this is episode 42. We do this every week, about 9 o'clock Central Standard, 8 p.m. Mountain. And Mac, I decided to go with quality over quantity this week as far as the news stories go. So I got like 5 or 6. If you have some you want to add in, you can do that too. But let's start with one that really is like a very good discussion topic. It deals with my man, your homie, the beloved Hideo Kojima. He had some comments that he made about outsourcing game development. This is on GameRant.com. It says, video game development has changed drastically since Hideo Kojima first entered the scene as a designer for Konami's MSX home computer division back in 1986. Whereas smaller, more regulated teams were the norm during the early stages of the industry's evolution from niche market to financial powerhouse, video game development now takes on a number of different forms. I'm using my phone to read these articles and someone just called me. I had to hang up on him. Some of which Kojima revealed recently he believes are much worse than others. The director of Kojima Productions took to Twitter late yesterday to discuss his video game development process. drawing parallels between his work in games to the work of a filmmaker. While the entire 17-tweet-long discussion is fascinating, Kojima seemed to criticize other studios' development plans, stating, here's the criticism, you guys, quote, an action game can never be completed by ordering from a blueprint and assembling parts off a factory line. When everything is outsourced, the parts that come back just don't fit together. Kojima isn't one to directly call out other developers, so it's unlikely he'll ever make it clear which studios he believes follow the factory line process of game making. Still, it's hard to believe this criticism doesn't stem partially from what Kojima has observed about Konami since he left. Metal Gear Survive seems very much like a game trying to follow its predecessor's blueprint, and Kojima has distanced himself from the game that shares the name with his most iconic series. So, Mac, effectively, he's saying when you're making a game, you can't just say, hey, you make level 1, you go make level 2, you go do the artwork, and hey, you fourth person, you go do the music, and then we're just going to put it all together in a package, and we're going to have a game. He's saying that it can't work that way, that outsourcing doesn't work. Now, you and I are not game developers, so we're not experts, and we've never really seen a game made from the ground up. But what are your thoughts on this statement? You think it's feasible that he's correct, or you disagree? What do you think?
Well, I agree and disagree, and I will actually point out that there is one game that while I haven't seen all the aspects of, there is one game that's not yet been released that I have a big spot in my heart for, where I have actually seen a great majority of its development process, and that would be Chasm, because they were doing development live streams. So I had seen things where the individuals were doing music, they were doing, other people were doing level design, other people were doing coding, and so on. And one thing I do know about the development process behind that game is that all of the people involved are not in the same place. They are all distant. Now, that being said, they did have regular meetings to make sure that everybody was on the same page. But I think the implication that you can't go to somebody who's not there in-house to get something done is, I don't think I would go that far. I think that's just a little bit too strong of a statement to be accurate. Maybe he's being a little bit strong, a little bit hyperbolic to make a point. But I certainly would disagree with the you can't make a game with outsourced labor.
Yeah, and dude, thank you for clarifying, because guys, I wasn't trying to say that you need to have the same person doing every part of a game, because that's absolutely not. So I'm glad you clarified.
And I don't think you were either, but I think his statement, and probably call it language barrier, but I think his statement came across to me that it was that he was airing, that he was airing a little bit too much on the side of, yeah, that way.
And one thing I will make a differentiation with is that the game you're talking about, Chasm, would you consider that to be an indie title?
Yeah.
Okay, and so there's a chance that just based on the types of work that Hideo Kojima does, that he's referring more to big scale AAA titles than the indie type games. So I could see a slight difference there. But even that said, I think we've seen examples of games that did well where they brought in people from outside, specifically I think with Call of Duty one year, they brought people in to work on the story who were not really game developers, but who were just writers to make the story a little bit better. And I believe the same thing has happened with some of the Uncharted games where they brought in writers, after someone else walked away to finish the story. But I think that the key to this concept is you can outsource talent, but I feel like you need to give them access to the parts of the game that are already finished, right? So that they're not completely working in a bubble. And I think that's what he's saying, is you can't have a bunch of people working in a bubble and then bring everything together. However, if you already have the story and then you say, all right, now, hey, here's the story, now you go design the levels, then maybe that's different than saying you guys both design the story and the levels at the same time in your separate rooms, and then we'll bring it all together and it'll work. So do I disagree with him? No. And frankly, he knows more than I probably ever will about game development, so I err on the side of agreeing with him. But I think Mac's point is very valid, using the example of Chasm to kind of prove that. So Cool. And you guys can let us know what you think in the chat as well. We got a few more news stories. Mac, we got something that is, I think, kind of up your alley, and I think you've played a game in this series before. This is on GameSpot as well. It says, Borderlands Studio Gearbox has given a strong hint that Borderlands 3 is on the way. And I say this might be up your alley because you're a co-op guy. Speaking at PAX West this weekend, Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford teased that around 90% of the company's production staff are, quote, working on the thing I think most of you guys want us to be working on, according to DualShockers. This isn't a guarantee of Borderlands 3, of course, and Pitchford added, a product does not exist until it's announced. Pitchford confirmed that a new Borderlands game was in development last year, though it won't necessarily be called Borderlands 3. At GDC this year, Pitchford showed off a tech demo for development techniques that could be used in a future game, like a new Borderlands game. Mac, have you played any of the Borderlands games, or?
Yeah, I've played a large chunk of Borderlands 1. Borderlands 2, for some reason, continually crashes on my computer.
Okay.
No idea why. But yeah, I have played through Borderlands 1, and while I was disappointed in the ending, I had a great time of it.
Okay, but you enjoy it? That's your type of game? You like that?
Yep, if it's co-op, I am there.
Gotcha, dude. Man, I feel like there's so many co-op games, if I just got a beefier PC, that we could just play co-op all the time.
If your PC can handle Left 4 Dead, we ought to be doing that, Mr. Nice Guy.
And my PC probably could, and I think I might even have it already.
We need to do it.
I feel like maybe I have it on Xbox 360, though. I know I have it in some form somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still even play Left 4 Dead?
I do.
1 or 2, or both?
Both, but I prefer 1. And I am much better at 1.
Okay, fair enough. I'll have to check and see. Are there mods and stuff, or is it just traditional DLC and standard game?
It's been a little while since I tried it out, but there are mods in the sense that there are player-designed maps and levels, and there have been some very interesting ones that you can play with that. Although it's been long enough that I'm not exactly sure how to. I'll find out.
Yeah, we're digressing.
Get back to you.
Yeah, we digress. Back to the news, guys. So, guys, Borderlands 3 may very well be on the way. Very exciting for anyone who likes Borderlands or games in general, because those games are fantastic. Next news story deals with my man, Super Mario. This is also on GameSpot. It says, iconic Italian gaming character Mario is not, in fact, a plumber. At least not currently. While he might have worked on pipes and drainage solutions at one point in time, he has since moved on to focus more on, quote, everything cool, according to Nintendo. The newly updated Mario profile page on Nintendo's Japanese website says Mario is no longer doing professional plumbing work. The page explains Mario thusly. And by the way, everyone in the chat, I apologize. We're not reading all your comments today, but we see them and we appreciate them. This article goes on to say, in the description of Mario, all around sporty, whether it's tennis or baseball, soccer or car racing, Mario does everything cool. As a matter of fact, he also seems to have worked as a plumber a long time ago. Mario creator Shigeru Miyamoto previously referred to Mario in a 2010 USA Today interview as basically a carpenter. In 1981's Donkey Kong, in 1983's Super Mario Bros., a lot of action took place underground and among pipes, so we decided he could be a plumber, Miyamoto said. So Mario is no longer a plumber. I feel like my childhood is ruined. Mac, what effect does this change in Mario's status have on you and your memories of him as a plumber since day one?
Honestly, anytime there's been a thing where Nintendo has said something about a character or changed something from what I remember about a character, I've kind of just gotten to this point where I just go, well, that's cute. And just said, but I know my roots. I know my Mario. I know my Samus. I know how it goes. Samus does not wear a blue does not wear a blue suit
underneath.
My Samus wears like an orange jumpsuit underneath, or what have you. But yeah, anytime there's a thing where something changes in a big way, I just kind of don't think about it. So it doesn't really, so that kind of thing doesn't bug me at all.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't bug me either. I was really exaggerating, and that really wasn't even a serious question. But I thought it was an interesting news story nonetheless. So, guys, we'll do 2 more news stories, and then we'll keep it moving. This one comes from Kotaku, and it deals with Pokemon. It says Pokemon may be marketed towards younger fans, but the most well-known competitors are adults. This year, however, the most impressive performance belongs to Nicholas Khan, an 11-year-old from Australia who makes Ash Ketchum look bad. Khan plays in the junior division, which encompasses competitors born in 2006 or later. He won the World Championships in his division this year, but he also nearly swept all 4 of the season's international championships. After falling just short of winning in London, Khan defended his home turf in Melbourne, found repeated success in Sao Paulo, and nailed the hat trick in Indianapolis. And just to add a cherry on top, he won one of the few regional tournaments in his area, beating the Masters Division World Championship runner-up in the process. That level of success is unheard of in video game championship series, at least in a single season. The scene has a 3-time world champion and a handful of players with some tournament wins, but that's spread over an entire career. Khan won almost as many tournaments in 2017 as some players have ever won, period. And Mac, this is really just a feel-good story. Like, I don't have any questions about it. I just think it's cool that this kid is 11 years old. He's found something he's passionate about, and he's turned it into a legitimate career. At age 11, video games allowed him to do that, and I think it's pretty sweet.
I have a somewhat darker take on this, Mr. Nice Guy, and that is that
you think steroids are involved in his success?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I feel threatened by the success of this young 11-year-old, precisely because when I was 11 years old, I was never given these chances to excel at competitive video games. And as we know, Mr. Nice Guy, I am the most competitive gamer out there. So it just makes me sick that some kid is getting this far ahead on these competitive video games. It's just, where was my shot? I should have been a contender.
You should have been born later.
That's right. Should have been born later.
Now, it's not too late for you to start training. And by training, I mean drinking egg smoothies, running upstairs with Eye of the Tiger playing in the background. It's not too late, Mac. It is not too late, little Mac.
I can do it. The name's Little Mac. I'm the Punch-Out King. Yes.
You can do it, man. Now, the thing is, too, you can never compete in the young division because it's for people born after 2006. But they have adults.
I mean, I've been told I have a very youthful air. I could maybe I could sneak in. Do you think I could pass for an 11-year-old?
The way you talk, you actually talk like you're about 50. To be quite frank with you, there's no slang in your game, Mac.
It's true. I have no.
You use sophisticated language.
Sophisticated. Yes.
If you dumb it down a little bit, you might be able to get away with it.
Well, maybe I could. I could throw in a few OMGs and hashtags. That's great with all the little knickerbockers these days, isn't it?
That's exactly right, my friend. That's exactly right. Well, guys, one last news story, and then we'll move on. So, guys, if you've been living under a rock, you don't know that today Destiny 2 comes out. In fact, I'm picking it up right after this podcast at GameStop. Someone in the chat says they have a question for me. Yeah, go ahead and type it in there, and I'll try to answer it at some point in the stream. But anyway, I wanted to share a Destiny 2 story and just some general Destiny 2 information. First thing about Destiny is they have already announced the date of the first raid. It's going to be coming out a week from today, I believe, September 11th. So a little bit over a week after today. Actually, no, exactly a week from today. I believe it's September 11th. Wait a minute. It might be September 13th. Regardless, we know the date of the first raid, and it's coming. So you have about a week to really level your character up and make sure that you're good to go before the raid. Make sure you get all your gear. Make sure you have some friends to play with. And then additionally, the first Trials of Osiris, or the new version of Trials of Osiris, will be out on September 15th, which is the competitive PvP. And then I just wanted to go over this GameSpot article. We have a lot of GameSpot stories today that has 5 of the major changes from Destiny 1 to Destiny 2. And I'll just read them. The first one is a more directed and focused story. If you played the first game, you know that it really was kind of all over the place. The second is rebalanced gear and engram system. You no longer have to go to the Cryptarch, I believe, to get your engrams decrypted. I believe you can decrypt them on the fly. Correct me in the chat if I'm wrong about that. Additionally, the game keeps track of stuff that you already have, and as well as your maximum light level, so you don't have to have certain gear equipped to have the probability of you getting certain gear apply. Now, if you play Destiny, you get that. If you don't play it, I get that that's probably going over your head, and that's okay. 3 is exploration. They've really ramped up the exploration game. And the fourth the fourth thing is customization. Way more customization options. And also, you don't get a sparrow immediately. So once the sparrow is available, you do get it. 5 is social. There's a new social space, the European drop zone, where you can socialize and stuff and do all kinds of cool stuff. So that's it for Destiny 2. That's it for the news. Mac, Destiny 2 looking mighty good on PC, my friend. It has co-op. I'm just saying, think about it. And on that note, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, so now we move on to the next little bit that we always like to do in our show. We call it gaming history. We take a look back at some of the games that have come out in years past over the past week, and maybe some of them have been very impactful, such as last week we talked a little bit about the first cartridge-based game with saves built onto the cartridge, which would have been The Legend of Zelda. This one, we'll just start off with it. We'll start with the last one first. This one is more of something that is of note and interest to me. A game released on the Xbox called Dynasty Warriors 4. So this was an interesting game because it blended action and tactics. You were, as one of these Dynasty Warriors, you were a commander of people, and you would, in addition to fighting on the battlefield, you would command troops, bring them with you, go into battle, charging in there. Everybody played Guan Yu because he had this big old pole arm, and that reach made a huge difference. But it has a very special place in my heart because Dynasty Warriors 4, at the time, I was still in high school, and my parents had actually gotten an exchange student. He basically rented out a room in my parents' house, and while he was attending university, his name was Yuji. And his name was spelled like Yugi from Yu-Gi-Oh! He was also, this is unrelated, but he was also a fantastic player. He played Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, like, he won every game of Yu-Gi-Oh! That he ever played. But point being
and his name was Yugi?
And his name was Yuji.
That sounds like predestined. That he
I know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it said Yuji, but anyway, the point being is that Yuji, of course, was a real fun guy. He was kind of soft spoken. He didn't come out of his room very much. He was very kept to himself. But Dynasty Warriors 4 is actually a game that we bonded over a lot. So I still every so often correspond with Yuji, and we talk about things about the good old days and such. And he wound up living in that same room in my parents' house throughout his entire college career.
Oh, really?
So he became basically a member of the family. And I'm sure it would have happened eventually. You know what I mean? It would have happened eventually that we would have made that kind of connection. But I really felt like for us, it was really hastened by Dynasty Warriors 4 because it was a game that we both really, really liked, and he was better at because he was better at everything. But nonetheless, it was one that he was very good at, and we really connected over that. But that came out in 2003, and it's an important game to me for that reason because it really built a friendship for me.
Dude, that's awesome story.
Oh, thanks. Yuji, just as this side note, had this really fun way of answering questions. You'd ask him a yes/no question, and he would say, Hmm, okay. And for yes, I mean, and it wasn't. It was like, hey, Yuji, would you like to run to the supermarket with us? He'd go, mm, mm, okay. And for everything, it was wonderful. I mean, it was just one of those little quirks that made him such an awesome, roommate essentially to have. But Yuji was fantastic, and still to this day, sometimes I kind of miss that he's not around. But oh well, I've got a great roommate now with Mrs. the Max, so I guess it all makes it's all right. So the next one is a title for the PS1 that came out in 2000 called Resident Evil Survivor. Now, as opposed to the previous offerings in the Resident Evil series, this was not a fixed camera angle, third person fixed camera angle or anything like that. This was actually a first person game, and interestingly enough, after I had failed for quite some time to play Resident Evil 2, for whatever reason, Resident Evil Survivor was the first Resident Evil game that I played and was able to complete. Which, those of you who've heard the story before, I got too scared to play Resident Evil 2 and left it off to the side for quite a few years. But Resident Evil Survivor, for whatever reason, just didn't quite do that for me, and I was able to play through that. So that came out. That's another important one for me. But this one, without question, is important to everyone. Depending upon who you ask, this may or may not be the greatest game ever made. Ooh. Certainly the greatest game from this studio ever made. Ooh. Certainly the only one that has ever received perfect scores from every single gaming periodical that it was put into. Ooh. I am, of course, referring to the 1997 smash hit for the PlayStation 1, Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII was released this past week, and love it or loathe it, it is considered to be insanely influential. Every gaming periodical out there gave it perfect scores across the board. I am not convinced Final Fantasy VII is not at the top of my list, but many people love it, and so we must give it its due as being, it did actually come out. Yes. I can. Yeah, what is that? Yes. They are telling me from the sound booth that it did actually come out, so it deserves its place here in gaming history. In spite of my particular protest. But yeah, Final Fantasy VII did come out, and that's what we can say with confidence, Mr. Nice Guy, and that is gaming history.
Someone in the chat rolled their eyes at you liking Final Fantasy VII so much.
Liking Final Fantasy VII.
Or maybe the statement that it's one of the best games of all time.
Some people do say that it is the best game of all time. I believe it's one of the only games that has ever received perfect scores from all gaming periodicals in which it appeared, and at least everyone that I'm aware of. Gaming periodical
to put things in perspective for those of you who are younger, there weren't nearly as many periodic gaming sources as there are now. Journalists.
Yeah, there were about six gaming periodicals back in the late 90s, and yeah, Final Fantasy VII was got. And now
it's getting some hate in the chat, though.
I agree. I totally agree with what everybody's in the chat saying. I do believe it to be overrated. I do believe that it was not worth it. And as a matter of fact, it is my personal opinion that Final Fantasy VIII got worse scores than it deserved because people were unwilling, like gaming publications were unwilling to give a second perfect score to the next Final Fantasy game. I honestly believe that happened in the reviews for Final Fantasy VIII because I sure as heck preferred Final Fantasy VIII. But nonetheless, that game did come out, so it's worth mentioning in gaming history. There we go. My due diligence is done.
There we go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our next segment, a little segment we like to call the Viewer Question of the Week. A segment where you ask us a question and we answer it, sometimes in a serious, sometimes in a sarcastic manner. And we might just want to change the name to Galvatron's Gaming Question, because he submits a question every single week. And this week he submitted another good one. He tweeted at us at 2NerdsInAPod on Twitter. He says, Call of Duty World War II, Assassin's Creed Origins, Need for Speed Payback, may be make it or break it for annual releases. Your opinions on annual franchise releases. Now, to put things in perspective for those of you who may not be familiar with some of these franchises, Call of Duty comes out every single year, but it is made by a different studio every single year. They have a rotating 3-year development cycle where 1 year it's Treyarch, 1 year it's Infinity Ward, and dang it, I think it's Sledgehammer Games the other year. Assassin's Creed is made by Ubisoft, comes out every year. However, they just took a few-year break from making it, feeling like they were oversaturating the market with those games. And the Need for Speed I don't know as much about, but I know it's a racing game. So, Mac, I'll let you field this one first. Your opinions on franchises that come out annually, he wants to know.
So, no game that I'm actually a fan of has a yearly release cycle. And I think part of that is because it is just because I feel like you need more time between things to come up with enough differentiation between a game for it to be worth my time. I don't want a game that's just got basically DLC, where it feels like it's the exact same mechanics, it's the exact same stuff. I mean, to be fair, yes, I love Mega Man with a fiery red passion, and it's the pretty much exact same mechanics in all of those games.
Yep.
So I mean, maybe my nose is just in the air, but no game that I am a fan of has yearly release cycles. Maybe that's just because the games I play aren't that popular. I don't.
He kind of clarified in the chat his question. So he says, will we see the end of annualized releases soon? Both Assassin's Creed and Need for Speed took 2016 off. He says sports games will always have annual releases. I'm referring to the end of annualized action game releases. Do you think we'll see the end of that in the near future?
Oh, okay.
It's kind of a totally different question, Galvatron, but we'll work with you on this one.
Honestly, I have no idea. I feel like when you're talking about games that are already on an annual release cycle, I don't think they're going to end that, because overwhelmingly, games that have sequels do better than games that don't. Just crunch the numbers. Look at games that have sequels versus games that are their brand new IP coming out on their own.
Gotcha.
And the second one, the sequels that come later on, perform better because they've created a user base. Because that's the way the numbers shake out, I think AAAs will always go for games that they can bring out multiple, that they can have several games in the series at the very least, and games that they can change just a few things, slap a new coat of paint on, and call it whatever 2017, whatever 2018, and so on. I think that's probably very appealing because those user bases kind of come with it. I think the only thing that will stop an annualized game release is probably going to be the death of interest in the series. So I don't think there are any market forces in the gaming industry that are leading toward the end of annualized game releases. That's my hot take.
No, I will say I don't know if I agree fully with what Max said about a sequel outperforming the predecessor because of the user base being there. I think that sometimes the sequels outperform simply because gaming in general is becoming more popular. So, for example, Mirror's Edge came out several years ago on Xbox, and it might have been, I think it was exclusive to Xbox, and then they did another one, and it did poorly, but it probably sold more than the original, simply because of the fact that gaming is now much more relevant, and there are a lot more gamers than there were back when the original came out. Not that it was a bad game this time around, but it underperformed despite probably selling more copies than the original. You can fact check me on that. I could be wrong. But anyway, to answer the question, I don't think we'll see a decrease. And I think that Activision has kind of, they thought that was going to happen, that these annual releases would stop simply because people were getting fatigue. They were getting shooter fatigue and specifically Call of Duty fatigue. And what they did to counter that is they said, hey, we're not making World War II games anymore, World War I games anymore. We're going to make a futuristic Call of Duty, right? We're going to have a zombie mode where you go in outer space. We're going to keep this game fresh, and we're going to do something different. So they did that. And then they said, hey, people are still getting tired of this franchise. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to add a third studio so that each studio makes the game once every 3 years, and it's fresh, and we're not tiring out our people, and it seems like it's new and it's hot. And then they said, hey, you know what we're going to do in 2017? We're going to go back to our roots, and we're going to not do a futuristic Call of Duty. We're going to do a World War Call of Duty again and bring back all those people who used to play but got tired of the futuristic stuff. So I feel like these studios, or maybe these producers, I should say, since it's Activision, are really preparing to be able to keep milking these cash cows until they're completely dead. Which, how long have people been saying that Call of Duty was dying? Since Black Ops 1 came out, since Modern Warfare 3, people have said, oh, Call of Duty's dying, and guess what? It's still here and it's still a behemoth. So I don't think we're going to see the end of annualized releases, especially not for sports titles, because there are so many changes in the teams from year to year. Now, NBA 2K now has a monopoly, or they did have a monopoly up until recently on the basketball franchise, and they keep adding new things that they say will keep it fresh, in addition to other roster updates. So I think that these are going to continue. I think taking a year off can be a good move because it makes you want it more. That's what they did with Assassin's Creed. That's what they did with Need for Speed. I think this is going to continue. This trend is not dead. That's my hot take. Mac, it's all back to you, man.
Well, over to me, and we're going to do our kick or kickstart segment. Now, I've got 2 minds about this. There is something I wanted to give you an update on. We are running short on time.
Dude, we're okay. Don't speed up because I'm trying to get Destiny. Let's do this podcast.
You sure?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Okay. Well, I'll try and hit the thing. So, an update. There was a thing called the Retro Engine Sigma that I had done a thing on a while back. I have it here. Yay! And I had done a kickstart, and we know that we had been, Mr. Nice Guy and I were a touch at odds about it. I felt like what I was really enthused about was the idea that I would have a plug-and-play emulation station that outputted HDMI and played on my television, and I could do basically everything I wanted. I wanted something plug and play for, and that is really what the Retro Engine Sigma was billed as a plug and play thing on Indiegogo, not so much on Kickstarter. And of course, people very rightly responded with things like, "Hey, why don't you just get a Raspberry Pi like Mr. Nice Guy did? He's got that Raspberry Pi set up in an arcade cabinet that he can play all the things he wants to his heart's content." And that is one way to go about it. But again, the thing I was really hoping for was this plug and play. And one last bit, I am not, I have flashed tablet firmware. I am familiar with how to get my hands dirty with a little bit of coding. So,
right.
But again, I felt like a plug and play solution was something that was worth the money. So now I've got one in my hands. I've had about a week or so to play around with it. I wanted to just give some feedback that this is not a plug and play solution as it was billed as on its Indiegogo, on its Kickstarter, or whatever. Do not bother with this.
So Mr. Nice Guy was right? But not for
Mr.
the right
Nice
reasons.
Guy,
not for the right reasons.
Yes, Mr. Nice Guy was right, but not for the reason that he should have been right for. But no. So the problem with it is that it takes more than a little bit of setup to get it going. And it is almost entirely based off of software that is open source. So these guys should not be charging, that these guys don't have a license for, so they shouldn't be profiting.
They're about to get shut down.
So we'll see how it goes. I mean, but I do have it set up the way that I want it. But again, it promised to be a plug and play solution, which it has not been. And so if you, like me, were like, oh, a plug and play emulation station, it's already set up, it's good to go. It is not. Don't bother. Just needed to put that out there. So, Mr. Nice Guy, you were right. I should not. I should have kicked that to the curb instead of kick-starting it. But nonetheless, I did. Shame on me. So now with that little bit of a thing behind us, I have our kick or kickstart subject for today. I warn you that the video for this is nowhere near as good as could be expected. It's okay, but it's, it doesn't really show us too frightfully much. It is Full Quiet. So it's an adventure game for the NES and PC. So they are going to be making this to go play on the Nintendo Entertainment System. It's got a little bit of creepy vibe to it. You are a guy who's searching for his son out in the wilds, who's disappeared. They've got some great art that they've got going on with climbing up into trees and these little, creepy forest monsters popping out and around, and that you have to shoot them. But the main two cool things is it's going to be an adventure game. They're going to have day-night cycles, and you'll be trying to get through these radio towers to get help and help your son in turn. Now, these guys, you may know them. They did the Haunted Halloween 86, which, Mr. Nice Guy, I don't know if you remember that.
I don't remember that. No.
Okay. Well, it was a game released for the Nintendo, and it was pretty good. They wound up getting about 5 times what their Kickstarter goal was for, and the people who backed it seemed to enjoy it pretty well, much in the same style of Splatterhouse. But it wound up being pretty good. So they have shown already that even though they don't have much in the way of in-game footage and they don't have a playable demo, that they have shown that they are capable. They have shown that they are capable of getting a video game out for PC and NES.
Bringing a game to completion. Okay, cool.
So yeah, they can bring a game to completion. They've done it before. This one's a different genre, but much of the same skills brought to bear. And if you liked Haunted Halloween 86, then this is likely going to be very enjoyable for you as well. So there we go. Full Quiet. Kick or kickstart, what do you think? Let us know in the chat. Kick if you should kick it out of there, kick it out of here, or kickstart if you think it's worth taking a chance on. So let us know in the chat. And Mr. Nice Guy, what do you think of it?
Man, I don't like their price points. That's the first thing that caught my eye. So here, the first thing that went to my mind actually was, I have an NES, right? A lot of people have a way of playing NES cartridges, right? You do, I do. People like us who like those retro games. But I feel like sometimes when people make these games, they just assume that everyone still has their old NES, right? That people in their late 20s, early 30s. And I don't think that many people really do. I think that ROMs and emulators have really kind of eliminated the need for people to maintain the old hardware. So my point is, to make a cartridge like this and say, hey, you can play it on your NES, there's really not as big an install base as people think when they make these.
Well, no, and that is fair. And of course, it's going to have a Steam release, which will be $10 for the Steam game, but $50 if you want the cartridge to play it on the NES.
And so that's what I was going to say. It's cool that it's on Steam, but I think that $50 is too much for the cartridge. And especially when you look at the fact with $29 or for $29, you get the T-shirt, the sticker, the pin. It's unclear if you also get the digital download for that $29.
I don't think you do.
And that's what I'm saying. So, I mean, just to break it down for you guys who may not be there on the page, for $10, you get a digital download. For $15, you get the digital collection. Then for $29, you get a swag bag that has an official Full Quiet t-shirt, a sticker, and a pen, but doesn't say anything about you getting a digital download. You know what I mean? So instead of the typical Kickstarter way of saying, hey, if you pay $29, you get all the stuff that also costs less than $29, you know, the $15 stuff and the $10 stuff, they make it like you have to pick and choose what prizes you want, and you don't get the other stuff. So to me, that's just not a good way of setting up a Kickstarter. And it's overly confusing. You're probably confused just if you're listening to this after the fact. So I don't know. I feel like there's too many things wrong with this. I'm just going to have to say kick it just for the reason that it's too complicated and I don't like the price of the cartridge. I think that's too much.
Yeah, and myself, I'm going kick it as well because it doesn't have a playable demo. But in spite of that, I still see a lot of promise for this one. And since they have been able to bring games to market before, I'm not worried about them being unsuccessful. I mean, especially since they've already nearly tripled their goal to make this. But one thing that is really cool, and I wish they had something I could play for it because I love the concept of what they're going for, especially these creatures, chupacabras or whatever they are out in the woods. Looks kind of crazy, creepy, and awesome in the best of ways. I half expect a Shoggoth to come around, through the trees at some point in time. But yeah, definitely going to kick it on this one. And it appears as though of everybody who's given their input in the chat, it looks like it's fairly unanimous that we're kicking
unanimous. It's nerd-nanimous here on Two Nerds in a Pod.
Indeed it is. And so that's what we have for Kick or Kickstart. Apparently kick the Retro Engine Sigma to the curb and also kick Full Quiet.
So here's my question about that real quick, Mac. You've paid for that Retro Action Sigma. Is that what it's called?
Retro Engine Sigma, close enough.
Retro Engine Sigma, what are you going to do with it? You're obviously going to tinker with it and have some fun, right? You're not just going to toss it or sell it.
Yeah, I'm probably going to play around with it a bit, see what else I can do with it. And then when I'm done, so I've got most of what I need already. Most of the consoles that I have interest in playing, I already have and have flash cartridges for them.
Yeah.
I may wind up giving this one away. My brother tried setting up a, Raspberry Pi system for his emulation needs, and that didn't go so well for him. So I might give it to him once I've got it all set up, but I might use it for some of the things that I don't have, like Commodore 64 or ZX Spectrum or something like that.
There you go. Good stuff. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time for the main event. It's time for my favorite segment of the show, a segment we like to call the Dummy of the Week. A segment of the show where I talk about someone who did something stupid, idiotic, or downright dumb, and we make fun of them in the world of gaming. This one comes from clickorlando.com. It says, and this took place in Florida, obviously. It says, a friend of a man who was fatally shot is accused of stealing his wallet and making purchases and selling the items at a pawn shop. Now, how does this relate to gaming? Wait and you'll see. It says, a detective was investigating another fraud case when she received a subpoena return indicating that Derek Cruz was an account holder of the other case, according to the arrest affidavit. That's kind of confusing language. In 2015, a Volusia County Sheriff's SWAT team member had shot Cruz in the face and killed him while serving a search warrant in Deltona as part of a drug investigation. The detective discovered that there had been a pawn transaction using Cruz's name and personal information, the affidavit said. The detective obtained the pawn slip and observed the transaction was dated January 12, 2017, using Cruz's name, date of birth, previous address, and phone number. It had a Florida driver's license number, however, that did not match Cruz's, deputy said. Here's where it gets interesting. The detective conducted a search of the driver's license number and found that the number was assigned to Jordan Monday, age 26, according to the affidavit. There is a signature and thumbprint at the bottom of the pawn slip, which was submitted for analysis. The affidavit said the detective contacted Cruz's mother, who said his wallet was stolen after he died. The mother said she knew Monday, who was one of Cruz's best friends. The detective also contacted a person who was Cruz's girlfriend at the time of death. Now here's where it gets really interesting. She indicated Cruz's power-up rewards card was in his wallet, which was stolen the day after his death, according to the affidavit. So, first of all, how did someone have access to his dead body the day after his death? Like, that's crazy to me. And have the balls to say, yo, I have access to his dead body because clearly there's a reason that I should. And I'm going to take advantage of that, and I'm going to steal his wallet and his power-up rewards card. Also, I find it very strange that his girlfriend was like, yeah, his wallet was stolen. And you know what? His power-up rewards card was in there. Like, she was that specific to say, you know, not his credit card was in there, not his driver's license was in there, not, you know, his punch card for Subway was in there, but his power-up rewards card, like, she specifically told the police that. There's something about this story seems suspect. But anyway, it goes on to say, the detective went to a GameStop location and met an employee who pulled up Cruz's power-up rewards account information. And it was also being used after he was dead. The affidavit said the employee checked to see if Monday had a power-up rewards account, and he did not. The detective conducted a check of the pawn shop database for Monday and found that he sold several items in May 2017. Blah, blah, blah. Bottom line, the way that they caught the guy who stole this guy's wallet is because he used the guy's power-up rewards card. That's crazy. Do you know that a power-up rewards card only costs $15 a year? And the only benefits that you get are you get 10% extra trading credit and 10% off used games. Oh, and you get Game Informer magazine physical copy. But, I mean, like, all this guy had to do was not steal from his dead friend and just pay $15. He really wanted that 10% off of a game, Mac. To steal someone's power-up reward card and use it after their death? Maybe I'm exaggerating, but to me this is crazy. Let me know what y'all think in the chat. And that's what I have for our Dummy of the Week, you guys.
All right. Well, now we're into our last news segment. Little thing we call Legalese.
Legalese!
So we talk about sometimes court cases that may shape the future, and sometimes things that are just straight up bizarre. So this one is a little bit interesting. Nintendo has been forced to pay $10 million in damages to a company called iLife Technologies. So here's the thing. iLife Technologies, they have a patent related to basically medical applications. The point of their patent is using motion control to determine whether or not someone is, basically fallen down and they can't get up type of a thing. But here's the thing. When the Wii and the Wii U came out, they wound up doing this thing where 3 years ago, iLife Technologies submitted a case and said, hey, this is patent infringement. Well, it has come to a close just barely, and a jury has ordered Nintendo to pay $10 million in damages to iLife for their use of their patented technology. It is a little bit interesting because it's a completely different application. And Nintendo, of course, makes their argument that no, they are in fact not going to be, that they're going to fight this. Nintendo's going to be taking it to higher courts and the appeals court. What is interesting is the original suit, iLife sought $144 million, $4 for each of the 36 million Nintendo Wii units before they filed.
I tried to whistle to show how much that is, and I couldn't whistle on cue.
Yeah,
but that's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot, and so it is interesting. They've only been ordered to pay $10 million in damages. According to Nintendo, their official statement, Nintendo agrees with this decision as Nintendo does not infringe iLife's patent and the patent is invalid. Nintendo looks forward to raising those issues with the district court and with the Court of Appeals. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. At the current moment, it looks like Nintendo has lost, which isn't something that we very frequently say with regard to lawsuits. They normally wind up winning at everything. So interesting to see the shoe on the other foot, but that's a little bit of legalese this week. Mr. Nice Guy, over to you, sir.
Over to me, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. That's our episode number 42 of Two Nerds in a Pod. Thank you for tuning in. Now, before we go, we like to do one last segment called What We've Been Watching and What We've Been Playing, where we talk about what we've been watching and what we've been playing. And also in the chat, you guys let us know the nerdy media that you've been watching and that you've been playing. And then we all share in our nerdiness, and we all leave with some new cool stuff to check out. So, Mac, you want to lead us off, man?
Absolutely. I've been watching a little bit more of Madam Secretary.
Nice.
And by a little bit more, I mean I've gotten through one more episode. But sorry, life's been crazy. I have also been watching this anime called Initial D. That it was ages ago I watched it, and now I've started picking it up again. But it's something that I really quite enjoy. So Initial D is good stuff. As far as playing games, the only game I've been playing is I've been using the Synergy mod, which is more of a launcher than it is a mod, really. But it allows you to play Half-Life 2 as well as Half-Life 2 episodes 1 and 2 as a co-op. So, they had me at co-op, and it's really quite fun. Just barely finished Half-Life 2. Through the Synergy mod, or Synergy launcher, if you prefer. So yeah, it's been pretty fun. But what about you, Mr. Nice Guy?
Well, you know what I'm about to be playing? I'm about to be playing Destiny 2. And, it's cool. I went to GameStop, and usually I get kind of crappy service at GameStop. Mm-hmm. Nothing to do with me. I just think that we all kind of do. And today, it was really good service that I got. So I walked in to pre-order, because I had pre-ordered at one location. I wanted to change the location. And I said to the girl who was helping me at the counter, I said, hey, can you help me with ordering this game? And do you have any more? And she was like, yes, we do. And she reached behind the counter, and she pulled out this Cade action figure, which I'm holding up to the camera. This is one of the characters that's in Destiny, and it's a pre-order bonus that I didn't even know was a pre-order bonus. And must have been sold out kind of everywhere else, but she hooked me up with it. So excellent service at that GameStop that I went to. And so, yeah, I will be playing that soon. As far as what I've been watching, a lot of Madam Secretary, actually. Political drama, in case you guys didn't know. My wife and I have been watching it. It's absolutely fantastic. What else have I been watching? A little bit of Arrow. And that's really it, man. I haven't watched a lot of Netflix or movies this week. And then as far as what I've been playing, still on that Uncharted 4 Lost Legacy. And we'll leave it at that this week. Overwatch, all the usual stuff, some arcade games. We'll leave it at that, Mac. You want to hit up the chat? Let us know what the viewers have been watching and playing?
Indeed. We've got some people who will be playing Destiny 2 any minute now. People who have been playing Forza Horizon 3, Gears of War 4. We've got some Mass Effect Andromeda, some Uncharted 4, and as for watching, we've got things like Death Note, that new show on Netflix, the Marvel shows, of course, Bosch, Man in the High Castle, and yeah, so we've got some good things in there for us to put onto our lists. So thanks everyone for telling us what you were watching and what you were playing.
Nice. Now, one quick favor to ask everybody before we go. If you guys can hit us up on iTunes, Two Nerds in a Pod is the name of the podcast. Subscribe. If you haven't already left a rating, please go leave us a rating. That helps us grow. Mac, you have anything else you want to say to the people before we take off?
See you next week.
You guys keep it nerdy. Nerdiest gaming podcast in the galaxy. Episode 42. We'll see you next week. Same bat place. Same bat time. Same bat rhymes. Keep it nerdy. Deuces.